engagement events. If you have just joined into our session this afternoon, we're going to ask for you to share in the chat your name, your position, and where you are from. And we're also going to ask that you name an event that was successful in reaching families for you. And thirdly, we're going to ask if there are any snags in your working with families doing family events, that you enter those in so that we can address those as well. So we do welcome you very much. You may wonder where that title came from. The title came from just thinking about the fact that if you're a competitor in a sporting event, you're going to arrive at this event ready to compete and to perform at your very best. When you hire someone to do work for you, you expect them to come with the skills to do the job well and to be ready to deliver and perform what tasks that you have asked them to do. So the same thing should be true of us with families. When we're working with families, our goal should be not just simply to do an event, but to do it extremely well. I'd like to welcome people wherever you are from. We have people from libraries. We have people who work in administrative positions, from state departments. We have somebody from the Kentucky Educational Television Network. We have a variety of people here today. And I know that your ideas will be most helpful us in sharing with others and kind of learning more about this topic. So as to who I am, I'm Bev Schumacher. I'm here in the city of Milwaukee in Wisconsin. And about 30 years ago, I started a company called Learning Props. I was a parent involvement coordinator working with families in a high-risk situation. And I noted that our families needed resources, and there began my journey. Joining me on the screen and running the controls is Vicki from Lone Star Education Products and Services. I am taking steps towards the idea of retirement and will continue to do some consulting work. But Vicki is going to be taking forward some of the materials I have developed, and we're in the process of developing a few more resources for her to fill even more gaps in how we serve families. So in the upper right is a game. It's called On My Way to Kindergarten. There's an English version, and behind that is a bilingual. That's one of the resources we've already refined and we think is ready to release to the public. And this is a tool that we would hope that at the end of a preschool year, people would use this to help bridge over the summer the skills we want families to be practicing to be on target for kindergarten entry. Below that is a picture of some games that I created, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. And the third thing is something called door hangers. I found out some days that my families missed me on doing home visits. And in order to overcome that, I found that if I left a message on their door, we increased the chances of our next connections being successful. So welcome very much. We are glad that you're here with us. In terms of what are my credentials, as I said, I started about 30 years ago working as a parent involvement coordinator, which I was able to do for about 10 years. In the process, I had the opportunity for the Southern Early Childhood Association to be a co-author of a book talking about family engagement. That book has been updated in 1920 and 21, thanks to the time and space that COVID granted. So what you see on the screen is a book that I will be referencing today. It's one of the handouts that have been posted for you. And that way you'll get an idea of some of the information that you would find in that book. I have been a teacher. I've been a consultant. I've done lots of presentations, both webinars and in-person presentations and trainings. I've also even worked at a public library for a while. So if you're interested in the book, you got to check it out with Vicki. So in the book that I created this book, and it's called The Menu. And the reason I did a menu is because if I go to a restaurant, before I decide what I'm going to ask them to serve me that day, I take a look at the menu. Whether that's posted on a wall, whether that's printed on a piece of paper, or whether I'm reading it through the side window of my car. The menu tells me what I can ask for. There are 5 different outreach strategies that are listed in my book that I talk about sharing information with parents and families, welcoming them, involving them in the program, supporting the learning that happens at home, and working within the community. When you do an effective parent engagement event or activity, you can cover any of those 5 things that are listed on the menu. So every one of those chapters does make reference to doing some type of event for families. Plus, I created in the appendix an additional 25 pages that weren't in our first edition because I continue to get so many questions from people asking, how do we effectively do an event with families and how do we overcome some of those challenges that we face? One of the handouts that you have is a handout that has several different slides, and that also has a place where there in the upper right-hand corner says one size does not fit all. No matter what I share with you today, there will be takeaways that you can apply to your program because you are so diverse in the kinds of programs you run. You'll just have to pick and choose what ideas you can take back. And the other question I need you to reflect upon as we go through the presentation is, who is it that needs to be your partner in delivering a championship quality event? The other handout that you have is a 2-page spread from the book. And there is a third handout that you have that is a chart from a group called the Flamboyant Foundation. If you did not get those, Vicki posted those about 2 hours ago. Enter into the chat and she can give you some direction as to how you can go ahead and find those handouts. So events, programs, or campaigns, that's what we're talking about. These things can be on-site or they can be off-site. What we're talking about is any opportunity for the families or community to engage with your program. They can be a one-time activity, or they could be an extended engagement experience. They can be connecting in a face-to-face experience or some creative adaptation. What I found during COVID is programs became very creative in ways that they could connect with families without actually being in a face-to-face situation. What you see in the picture in the lower right is a picture from the wall at our program. And what that was an art display, and every classroom put an art display out. So as children stopped, their pictures were posted, their piece of artwork was posted, and as families came and went from the program, that in itself could easily be the way that you would do an engaging family event. It could be an art show that families can enjoy at their convenience. Events you host must align with your goals. Know what your mission statement is. What are your program guidelines? What is it that you promise to deliver to families? And then the events you do need to be on target with what that goal is. So define how events support that goal. If what you are doing does not support the goal, then you have to figure out, how do I adjust that idea so we can achieve the goals that we have set, or how do we reframe this? Well-designed events are powerful in building relationships. And I will say that poorly designed events are also powerful, but not in a positive way. Why do events and programs? Well, let's first of all look over on the right-hand column of your slide. School plus home equals learning. This is a phrase I use in practically every workshop I present because it's so important. I would look at my families and say, we do as much as we can at school to support your students' learning. And when you at home do as much as you can, then that's when we have the maximum learning for your youngster. The upper right picture is of a dad. The dad is leading an event for our program out in our play area. So I had a variety of dads that came forward to help us with this project, and they were actually events outside, and we were blessed with good weather for that night. Otherwise, we were going to have to pack ourselves into the school in order to be able to do that. The lower right is a picture from a workshop that I did in the Milwaukee area. This was a drop-in kind of event. Families during a certain block of hours could stop in at their convenience, and they moved through different stations making books with their children. Why do we do events and programs? They build relationships. They build relationships between the staff and the families, between the staff and the children, between families that are in your program. They can help you to get acquainted or to deeper relationships. They're a chance to showcase the work that's being done in your program, the projects being done, efforts that are being done, or they might showcase something within your facility. They're also a chance to teach or instruct families. They're a way to celebrate events, celebrate accomplishments, celebrate what the children are going to be doing next. They can be a marketing benefit. If you do an event well, you will have people in your community talking about the event to other families, and it becomes a very strong marketing possibility. You can get program buy-in or ownership, maybe introducing a new campaign that you're going to be doing. And customer satisfaction is always something that we're striving to get, and programs can help us to do that. This is a learning cycle. As an educator, you probably see this on a regular basis, and I would assume that the library world and other dimensions of early learning also have similar kinds of charts. First, you have to assess and gather information, analyze and measure what your outcomes are, gather feedback. Then you set goals and you plan. What are you going to do? Identify and prioritize your goals, plan it, do it. And the cycle keeps turning over and over. Parents or partners, what is the difference? I will say this over and over again, because to me, this is a very important principle. We're not just talking about parents being a recipient of what our program does, but they truly need to be our partners. So take the letters in the word parents and try to spell the word partners. The difference between these two sets of letters is you are. It's missing one letter R to be able to spell the word partners. That's the difference between a parent and a partner. When people say, oh, well, parents don't come to the programs we do. The families are too busy. They don't want to be a part of this. My question always goes back, what are you doing to change that? And it's all about building relationships. I'm going to ask you to share in the chat a suggestion of something that you might put into a bag to share with families. This could be a lunch bag. This could be a larger size bag. What could you send from your program to the family units so that they could continue to support learning and be involved at home? This is the one handout that I provided to you. This is from a group called the Flamboyant Foundation. The Flamboyant Foundation has as one of their goals how to accelerate student learning. So the focus of doing events can be student learning, and that's what they were trying to promote with this chart. So if you look on the left, these are low impact effects of doing events, celebrations, fundraisers, potlucks, performances, and showcases. Not that they don't build relationships, not that they can't be significant, but when you look on the right side, you see the higher impact ways that families can be engaged to support learning. Weekly data sharing folders, home visits, modeling of learning support strategies, parents help on learning projects. So let's say you're about to do an event. How can you take the lower impact activities and turn them into higher impact? For example, during a back to school night, you might demonstrate strategies for supporting reading. Go back. Back to school night's about in the middle of the chart, but if we add on the parents' help on learning projects, you see how that suddenly makes that a higher impact experience. You host a potluck and you shared goals for improving student math. So on the right, the illustration is a pizza party and bingo. Families are invited for an evening of fun and learning, but also while they are there doing that, we can introduce bingo and we can make that an educational experience, whether working on numbers or letters or animals or household objects. We can create bingo activities to do that. I did a research project, and what I was trying to do was to find out what strategies are most effective in engaging families and supporting learning at home. And what I came up with are 3 different tiers. First of all, we can make suggestions to families. Suggest an activity that they can do at home. This could be a math activity, games to play, travel ideas. So I could have them wear a label. This label says, read together. Put it on the child's shirt and send it home with them. Or we could put it in the newsletter, and we could ask parents, for example, to find letters, find signs with the letter B. Maybe we ask them to take a picture of that. Maybe we have them draw an illustration. But we've given the suggestion and the nudge and let families go from there. The second tier is suggestions with prompts. It's the same idea of giving them a suggestion, but adding to it a simple prop in order to make it go further. That word prop came from the families I was serving who said, why do you always give us some props to work with? And it was like, oh my gosh, they're right. I do give them props all the time. So might be an activity, but it's printed with directions, or it's a low-cost resource added to it. So let's say letter practice is what we're working on with the youngsters. And what we might do is give them a piece of chalk and tell them different ways that they can use the chalk to enhance letter learning. Or maybe we give them a recipe for a snack and maybe even share with them one of the ingredients needed to prepare the snack. The third tier is what I call the shared resource. And what you see there is a game that I'm calling the counting challenge. The counting challenge really is a card that has the intention of being cut apart. So the scissors will be shared with the family that comes to the event that night, and they'll be given a little plastic bag that as they cut them out, what we're trying to achieve is for the youngster to be able to use the scissors. So many of our youngsters are struggling with being able to hold a pen and a pencil. We need to go back and we need to get that wrist in motion. We got to get the fingers all working together. So that would be an example of a shared resource where I give them a nudge or something to enhance the activities they do at home. What I ended up doing was actually creating more kits. In the upper right-hand corner, you see an example of where we started. We started with a plastic bag. We made file folders that were games that could be sent home to the families. We used milk lids for the movers. We made dice with a block of wood, and away they went. They went home with families, and we included a book always in each one as well. What I found over a length of time is that I simply could not to continue making these file folders that came back wrinkled, crinkled after a few visits. What we were trying to do is have a sustainable library versus having a distribution to families. So what we ended up doing was finding that fabric was a solution, and one day figured out that if we put a zipper on it, the whole thing worked very well. So what we actually did was create little kits that went home with the youngsters to work with them at home. Using the work that Vicki and I are now doing, we are actually creating them on cardstock games. This is a little bit more effective in that we can add a lot more color and jazz to it. We also have found that it is a different price point. So those are some of the kits that we do, but they all grew out of creating our own for a long period of time. So what snags have made doing family events a challenge to you? Vicki, can you share out to us what some of the snags were that are mentioned, and hopefully those are the ones I'm covering? Vicki, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I was
Okay.
just muting myself. I apologize.
You're busy letting people in. It's okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we had some folks that were talking about COVID and
Yes.
having to use the resources, given to us through Zoom and such, and what a headache kind of that was for them. They had, let's see, that was one of the main things that I've seen here today, and the snags that they had. Let's see, give me 1 second. I'm going back through really quick because I'd seen one other one here. They had, many of them had successful events. Functioning, executive functioning for families with ADD and ODD. Let's see, give me 1 more second. And I apologize, I was busy letting folks in and
That's all right.
helping get the things that they needed.
I'll share one, Vicki. I'll share one that I saw.
Please.
And can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll share one that I saw, and I actually almost responded to Kelsey. She talked about having like an RSVP for events, and you set up for an event, and only half of the people show up. So I'm from Hato, Texas. Well, actually Pflugerville, Texas, right outside of Boston. We did our first parent family engagement in-person event since COVID. And yes, COVID was, huge. So we've started doing lunch and learns that have really started to take off, but we thought we'd have it in an on campus event with the whole district. So this is district wide. I'm the district leader of our parent liaisons, and we had about 180 RSVP and 12 showed up. So we had 24 presenters with presentations, and we had 4 sessions with about 4 people for each session, totally conference style. We had food, we had entertainment, we were ready to go. But it was the first day of beautiful spring weather, football, soccer. If y'all know Texas, Texas is a football state. And it hit us hard. So after I cried, we found that if we invite students and have more of a student engagement, then the families will come. So in January, we have a student-led conference. And I'll be able to compare the two and the difference between the two. But that's what it was. And when I sent an email to all of those that RSVP to see why they didn't make it, of course, using my nice words, a lot of it was because they had gotten so used to not being on campus that it just kind of went to the wayside. Like, oh yeah, I was so excited about it when I saw it. I RSVP'd and then I totally forgot about it. So it's kind of like we're building back up to get our parents back into the buildings. We've had some CTE presentations since then. And even though we're the lowest we've had, in the years previous to COVID, when our student population is rising. So it's just them like literally getting used to coming back on the campuses. So we decided to start by revving up our volunteers and our mentors and just getting people to get back into coming in the doors. So we'll see how that goes. But Kelsey, I'm with you, girl. I feel it.
Let me emphasize a few of the things, and I will look at the chats afterwards and I'll give some personal responses to people as well. Some of the things she mentioned are absolutely right. We have to invite them, but then also remind them at the last minute, because even though we think, oh, I've got a reservation and it's on my calendar, our families didn't operate well with calendars. So some way to nudge or to encourage them. If you can involve the children in it, she's absolutely right. The effectiveness of it goes skyrocketing because they will do it for their children, but they're not so sure about coming for the rest. Staged learning for families isn't always welcomed by families. So sometimes we got to sneak that into the fun events that we do and the other things that kind of happen. They often do not do as well with presentations or speakers as we may have, but many of us in an education setting have come through college campuses and we're used to being talked at and picking up key information. And one other thing she did that was beautiful, yes, absolutely, follow up afterwards and find out, why didn't this work for you? And sometimes your numbers will just stagger, and then other times they'll show up even though you think, oh, they didn't reserve, but they still came. So a couple of really great things and a couple of other highlights that I will definitely kind of hit upon. These are the challenges that I have designed my conversation about, from feedback from people who have been in the field doing events and from some personal experiences. So what we're going to talk about is using the team approach and critical in delivering the event, getting families to attend, welcoming everyone to be participants, not an audience, equipping staff to build relationships, informing those not able to attend, there's still an audience that we can share the information to, sending families home with action steps or resources, and then always measuring our outcomes so we know what we can do the next time. So let's talk about each one of those separately. So we're going to use the team approach in delivering the event. We can't do those things solo. The more people we involve in helping us do the event, the more likely they're going to show up. The dads that I showed you the picture of helping on the playground event, once they were trained to do the learning station that they did, they felt really obligated to come. And we made it kind of fun, but along the way, we really sent a strong message to them about the importance of motor skills. Avoid overburdening your staff. If you make the staff do this and make the staff do that, pretty soon you burn them out. Look for a workforce out of some of the families that are in your program. Invite community engagement. We found that youth groups, some different scout groups, different community people are often looking for a project that they can do, feel good about, and do a team building with their staff. So look for who in that community you might possibly use, and make parents your partners. Remember the difference between a parent and a partner? You are the difference, and it's about relationships. School plus home equals learning. I will send that message again and again. So snags that can make doing events a challenge is getting families to attend. There's a formula: family, fun, food, free equals success. If you answer those 4 ingredients, family, fun, food, free, it moves you towards success. Involve their children in the event. It can be something as a display on the wall for parents to see. It could be a video that was taken in a classroom or at a classroom experience that you would be sharing with them. It could be having the children do a small performance, a small little thing in order to show the parents. Build the excitement. Are you coming? Are you coming? Oh, I sure hope you are coming. Keep inviting them. Invite them 3 times and in 3 different ways. Keep the communications flowing. And if you invite them and your director invites them and a teacher invites them, eventually some of them break down and they come. Leverage technology. Phones are very attractive to families these days. How can you use that phone in order to leverage that to give families the reminders that you need? And if children add to the invites, it's all the more powerful. So that little hand there is an idea. If the child has helped to shape that invitation, they're more likely to tell their parent about it too and share with the parent that we made that. If you're going to make phone calls to remind families, just have a brief script figured out. Tell them why you're calling. I want to invite you to the program. Tell them some reason why they want to be there and invite them. And as crazy as it sounds, the date me little picture down there, people don't walk around with signs on anymore, but they sure are effective. I wouldn't use it for every program, but I would use it once or twice a year because the families looked at whoever was wearing that and they would just kind of chuckle. But then we could say, remember, you're coming to our event on Saturday. Get families perspectives. Some families have reasons for not attending. Some of them did not have good school experiences and shy away from involvement. Welcome everyone to be participants, not an audience. We don't want them to just be there. We want them to learn something, to gather something, to go out and help us achieve what our goals are that we have set for our program. Remember, I said I'd repeat that: family, fun, food, free. They're right there. Involve their children in the event. So the picture on the right is a picture of children being involved in an event. And I put that picture there and went, no, that's not the way I'd want you to really do it. I'd rather have a long, skinny table and chairs on both sides and have the parent sit next to or across from their child and do the activities together. I have get the right speaker and I put a slash through it. Many of our families don't respond well to being told what to do. But if you do, and there are many reasons to have a speaker, there are very qualified people that really connect with the families. So let's say, for example, kindergarten readiness, and you're going to have a principal from the next grade level up come and talk to the families and tell them about it, would be a perfect time to do it. But then pair it with other activities. So maybe the speaker talks about what are the skill sets that children need to be successful at the next level. Show them how they can practice those. If you have a speaker, keep them short. Don't let them get too windy and talk for too long. Avoid shoulding. you should do this and you should do that, it creates guilt rather than participation. Invite participants to share. So maybe you bring back a parent who had been in the program the past year and you bring them in so they can talk about the new experience. There's another thing I called station learning, and I really like station learning. It's where children participate in an activity in one room and then they go to the next and they go to the next. If you have children with disabilities and it's so overwhelming to have a group of people like you would see in that photograph, you can have learning stations in areas that are more specifically met to their needs. And you can help them to deal with the group of people. But plug learning in between the fun. They can have fun, and yet there can be a message or a lesson or an idea that they carry away. Equip staff to build relationships. Position staff so they can connect. They don't need to be the ones scooping out the food. They need to be the ones that have a chance to stop and pause and to talk to the families. Everyone should wear name tags. Parents, maybe they're the guest of somebody, maybe they're not a parent, maybe they're a grandparent, but everybody should have their name tags on so people can decide who fits with who. And so many times we see a parent and we are just can't put their name to them. So this helps to overcome that. Also, school staff should wear name tags as well so that they too have the ability to look at that person's name and know where they fit in. And sometimes your staff can wear liking apparel so that they stand out in the event. Introduce new guests to enrolled families. Make sure that a parent who's new knows where they're going. Oh, you've not been here before. Hey, so-and-so, when you're on your way down to the cafeteria, would you take this family with you and introduce them? Carry a notepad. If something happens during the evening you want to make note of, don't trust your brain to remember that an hour later. If a family comes up and they have an issue of concern and they want to have a serious conversation, bring out your notepad, say, let's make an appointment to address your issue. We want to give you your full attention, and this isn't a good time for us to have this conversation. Let's talk soon. Affirm that everyone understands the value of families. Thank you for being here. Tell the families over and over again that you are pleased that they are there to be with you for the event. Ann Henderson, Karen Mapp have done some tremendous work. And in their work, they say that when parents are involved, children go to better schools and they do better in school. Use that phrase and tell that to families over and over again. Thank your staff for being there as well and acknowledge them at the event so that they get the recognition of others. And sometimes families just don't know people's names. Informing those who are not able to attend. Maybe you can repeat a program. Maybe you can offer it a second time option. Maybe you do it in the morning, maybe you do it after school at the end of the day. Or maybe you record it and you share it in that way. Always summarize the event and share the learning highlights. Take lots of pictures and use pictures to tell the story of what your event was like. If it looks friendly and welcoming, maybe they'll join you for the next event. Do a follow-up to families. Highlight the event and share the key ideas that they should take away or action steps. And then include, for those not there, the resources that they need. So when I showed you the yellow page that was a counting activity, but was disguised also as a fine motor activity with using the scissors, share it, send it home with them so that they can do the activity at home. Interview parents and students that are there and let them share their comments so that other people hear about the event that maybe weren't there and realize, gosh, that sounded like it would have been fun. Eventually you can resolve some of their shyness to come. Support them with resources to advance your event agenda. Send families home with action steps. Equip them to build the skills that need further support. How do I give them the ideas, the knowledge, and maybe some low-cost props in order to do that? What could you put in a brown bag to send home for the families? Do make and take events. Parents love being involved. They like doing things. The picture on the right is kind of a little muddled. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's a puppet on every one of those hands. And the people hiding are the parents who made them. And you won't believe how much fun they had making those puppets. And when they went home, it's a wonderful invitation to talk and to extend conversations. If you have the opportunity, do book giveaways or share resources like a lending library style like my program established. So Vicki, what did they tell us we could put in our bag?
Well, a couple of folks, Christine and NASCO, said they send books home for students to read with their families, and along with some literacy activities. Jamie, they would like to send clay home to make something together.
Mhm.
Let's see, Mary Beth, take and make crafts. Christine, literacy tips, activities to go with books.
Nobody gave me a science activity. Oh no, I was hoping for a science activity. What about some cotton balls? What could we do with cotton balls in a bag? Because they are really low cost. Could we include a straw so we could get them blowing the cotton balls around? Could we give them a small container of paint with the cotton balls to make really, really low cost paintbrushes with the children? Keep thinking, what can I share that will have an impact? And even the resources they still might have at their home, if they're given them and they take them home and have an idea, they can implement that and encourage learning. How do we measure the outcomes? Well, like was said, I called and found out, why didn't you come? Talk with them and ask them those questions. Put out a suggestion box and say, what kind of events would you like us to schedule? Walk around towards the end of an event with a clipboard and say, hey, give us your ideas. Was tonight's time an okay time for you? Would it be a better time? What day of the week do you prefer to be able to do activities with your children? Talk with them, but talking means also listen to them. You should talk more, talk less, and listen more. Get that right. I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I would be wise to use them in that proportion. The last picture on that top row has a picture of some kind of tallying that was done that evening, and people then put dots and stickers in order to make some value voting. Track attendance levels, but use the same approach for each event. So am I counting how many children attended from my program? Am I counting the number of parents that came? Am I counting the number of new families that were there? Or am I just counting how many people are there total? But do it the same for each event. So when you have an outdoor picnic, you know how many total people you have there, but maybe you also know how many children are represented or how many families. So think about how you can do that evaluating, that measuring your outcome, and keep record of that. Celebrate the new faces attending. Ask those new people to stand and give them a round of applause for being there. Pair them up with somebody who is comfortable then and say, hey, have you met this person behind you? They have children in the same classroom. So help them make those connections to relate to. And after an event, make sure that you share the attendance to every staff member, because they need to know which families are there, so they know which families need to be reached out to that have not been engaged. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you have already entered a suggestion into the chat of some things that have worked, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you have not done that, please feel free to enter those in, and I will make a summary of all of those ideas as well for you. But don't reinvent the wheel. So while you're doing that and Vicki's looking at her list of things to share, I'm going to share 3 ideas. The one on the left was called a slice of advice. We serve different kinds of slices at different times of day. But what we did is we had our school psychologists come and talk about behavioral management. One of those subjects that we know our families need guidance on, but they don't readily come to hear a speaker. So they didn't know what the topic was going to be for the slice of advice, but she gave slices of advice. And then we had questions, and we could have small groups where they could discuss situations and talk about how they would handle it. Another idea that was shared to me at a training that I was doing is that the parents and the children made cardboard vehicles, and they used them in various activities for races, parking them in certain areas. So they did activities with them. The last one on the right is one that I experienced, and I say experienced because it was a strong learning curve that I had. We had a RIF, Reading is Fundamental grant, and we could work with families as well in our grant. So we had a group of families come together to discuss this idea. My role was simply to take notes at that meeting, but to implement whatever they came up with. So my director is leading this meeting, and one of my parents says, "Oh, I have a really great idea." And that great idea was to paint t-shirts for all of the children. That's where that RIF comes in right there, and that star. We had 350 children in our program. I'm sitting in the back of the room going, trying to tell my director to go on, dig up another idea. But that's the one that they settled on. Were we able to paint 350 shirts? Yes, we did. We had a wonderful team of parents. What didn't work well was that star that you see on the front. It was made out of this gold thick paint. It took forever to dry in our humidity in our program area. So as a result, it was a nightmare. I came back to my desk one day and found these on one arm, a shirt on each arm, a seat on the back, a shirt on the back, a seat on one on the seat. It was just crazy. So as a result, it was quite an experience. And then this parent who had the idea said, "I'm going to call the local TV station and see if they'll come out." We already had a guest reader coming to read. So this person came from the TV station, and they were so excited to see our stars because their logo was Star 64. And they did video clips of our kids in between afternoon cartoons for a whole week. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I wanted to say, no way are we doing that. Vicki, what are some suggestions?
Okay, some of our suggestions we have Jamie. She does a Christmas party yearly, and all the previous and current kiddos come with their parents, and they bake cookies with the parents, and during summer they have a huge pool party. Mary Beth, she does mobile, or they have a mobile vehicle that gives away books and offers free Wi-Fi. Dana does lunch and learns via Zoom. The topics are selected by the parents. And I had one other one here. I'm trying to remember where that was at. Give me 1 second. We had somebody that just did cybersecurity and digital safety family fitness night.
Awesome. We will summarize those ideas and we will share them out to you. The other ideas that we have shared with you are on this handout, and that's on the main handout that I shared with you. And then the 2-page spread from the book also has a list of ideas that you can possibly build off of or go from. I do have on here to be sensitive to holiday themed programs. It is so sensitive when we have families of diverse background, diverse ethnicity, diverse economic status, diverse religious backgrounds. When we do a holiday themed program, it's very easy to offend someone. So you may want to stay away from that. I had a description here, and I'll only read the one line because we are starting to, time is escaping me. Culture barriers in regards to having a holiday potluck on Friday night in early December. Some families were upset it was called holiday potluck. 43% of Americans prefer Merry Christmas over Happy Holidays. 62% of evangelical Christians prefer Merry Christmas. So just in the naming of the event, families were already offended by what the school was offering. I mentioned station learning was one of my favorite things to do. And this little booklet that I have that you see there is actually made out of one piece of paper folded down. This started as 11 by 17. So this is a friendlier size than this one, which is an 8.5 by 11. But in these stationed events, families were given clues and activities that they could go and do. The same thing with this little booklet. This one is one of the ideas. It's the appendix in the menu book that I created. Because as I said, it's such a successful way to do events because you can move them through Learning Station. You can have something in science, you can have something in math, you can have something in early literacy, you can have something in vocabulary enrichment. So you can do so many different things. And this idea was an idea shared to us to do by a family because they couldn't afford to go to this Blues Clues event that were coming to the local arena. And we had a major, major turnout. This is probably one of the highest attendance events we had offered. Make and take are fun things to do. On the far left is a book that is made by stapling paper inside of a dinner napkin. A luncheon napkin will give you a smaller book. In the middle at the top, you have a book that is made. The book is made with envelopes, and each envelope, instead of being glued shut, is instead a pocket. So this is a rhyming one that I'm holding. This is a pig, and it rhymes with, and there's a picture of someone wearing a wig. So this could be an event that you could do, and I've done these books in so many different themes for families. The lower part is a book made with different colors of paper plates where we were talking about colors. The one on the far right is a book that is made with a paper bag. The flap holds my little book down or closed, but inside I've mounted a few sheets of paper. It could be after reading a story about someone going on a trip on a suitcase, about a toolbox. It could be somebody's purse. So many different themes and stories. I know the librarians listening to me are saying, oh, I have an idea. And it's a fun way to do a make and take. This is what I call a campaign. Instead of an event of a one-time thing, this was an event that was an expanse of a couple of weeks. What we did in different occasions is encourage reading. So the top picture is actually a wall that was in my parenting center. And each of the shapes that you see on that wall represent a book that was read by youngsters in our program. So every shape was from a different classroom so we could see whose was whose. The lower left, that one is a picture of some paper dolls. After doing lots of those little papers and hanging them up, we decided there had to be a better way to do it. So it was a cutout doll using the die cut shape, and they were able to list 5 books. We invited them to decorate them too, as we were doing an art program and art awareness. And the one on the right, that's a reading chain. Each one of those chain links is a book that was read by the students in our program. So each child had a competition to see how many books they could read. We made a classroom chain, and then we made a whole school chain. And then on the right, that's our celebration and our thank you note to our RIF sponsors, showing them how our campaign turned out. Bingo, we've done bingo in so many different ways. You can have them come to an event to sell the event to the families, or you can do it as a celebration at the end. It needs to be offered for a manageable length of time, but every square has a different activity for them to do. Homework sheets, visiting the library, reading a certain number of books, coming to a program we're doing. We were able to build their buy-in by remarketing it to them over and over again. Do consider the time it takes your staff to manage that. This was labor intensive for our staff to be able to check off who did which ones and to keep record of that. Each child had to have their own record sheet, but you can use parent volunteers to do it as well. But then find a fun way to wrap it up and call it quits and realize you've nudged your families to do some great activities together. This is a bingo activity, and she is with us, Mary Beth. I know you were out there. I saw your name when names were flying past. It's all I see is one name at a time on my screen. So we're delighted that you shared this with us. But when I asked Mary Beth for permission to include this in a slide in my program today, she said, please give Amanda Granley credit that she does the adult programming, and it was her idea that this was created. But this was a library doing a summer reading campaign. Telephone a friend, bird watch out your window, read a book that features an animal. Look at all the fun things that you're getting children to go and do, or families to do together. Work with families. Who do we need to engage? The answer, everyone who supports your students. Some of the people within our program are marginalized and we overlook them. We found out at one point how many dads we had that were incarcerated. We needed to do something about getting connections to these fathers. And I'm sure we had mothers as well. It's just that we had a facility in our community where we knew where the dads were. Think of the impact it has when that father has not been in that child's life and how we can work to keep that connection going as well. We have herd families, we have helicopter families. They all have different needs, but remember, each one wants what's best for their child and engage them. If you are welcoming families to an event, make sure that there are welcome spaces. Is there parking arrangements that can be made for them? Is a welcome sign on the door? Are there materials or things to occupy them if they come early and feel awkward and need to just kind of be busy while everybody else gets there? Is everyone smiling at them when they come? Do they know who is who? Do you have a slide you could put up that would let them know who the different staff members are? Can you introduce your staff members so they say, oh, that's who that is, and they get a name and a face together. If you offer refreshments, make sure the refreshments are appropriate for whoever you're serving them to, but try to serve healthy things. That itself is a lesson to some of our families. If we were together in one room today, I would be throwing right now a beach ball at you, and I would have on that beach ball different ways or different interests that people had trying to make people get connected with each other. So it might say, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? What's your favorite park? What's your favorite children's book? So just find ways to make them have the opportunity to get connected. And once they realize some of the commonalities they have, they'll take off on getting relationships built really quickly between family to family. Do you have directions in the building so that they know where to go? If you say, go to the cafeteria, do they know how to get to the cafeteria? Their children might. You can make sure that they can direct them there if you can. But take time to introduce people to each other and take lots of pictures and share them back out in your newsletters, in announcements that you make. Make sure that you share them so other people see the fun things going on. When you wrap up an event, make sure to send everyone home on a positive note. A lot of programs like to give a door prize for people coming. And yes, it's a nice lure to have people come in and maybe win a door prize. But the only one who's then leaving truly happy is the one who won the door prize. If instead you can invest in some books that you can give so that each person walks out the door with something, if you can get a small gift package put together with maybe chalk or paints or crayons, things that will enhance learning at home, please consider that instead. Summarize and report back. They want to know how many families came, how many families participated. When you're done, write a report about the event. You think you're going to remember how many meals you served, but you don't. And then the next time you try to do an event, you're back to the guessing game of what do we expect? If you had any kind of planning sheets, include them with your files, scan them in, save them on your computer. Deliver the message to those not attending. Just because they didn't come doesn't mean we can't send a message to them. Sorry we missed you last night. Here are 3 key ideas. These ideas were shared by these 3 parents. Put a parent's name next to it and say, what was the takeaway that that family had? So they realize it's not just coming from you, but it's coming from other parents. Acknowledge supporters. Who was the committee who helped you? Make them stand and give them a round of applause. Who is it that has donated resources for the evening? If a vendor knows that they've gotten feedback from somebody who was at the school when they gave away snacks at night and that they were the sponsor of it, they're going to readily do that for you again. Always tell them what comes next. So you missed this event, but what's next on the calendar? Give them those ideas and plans long before they have to come in for that event. So I said I was going to ask you to make sure that you picked up 3 ideas. This is kind of a dangerous time of year. Research says that if you get a new idea and you don't implement it within 3 weeks, you're likely to lose that idea. I don't want you to lose the ideas that you've picked up in what we have shared today. What I'd really like you to do is to find an idea that you'd like to adopt. Number 1, I would like for you to enter some of those ideas into the chat so your ideas can motivate other people as well. But by taking the idea from your thinking or from your handout and putting it in writing, I'm increasing the likelihood that that idea will be carried forward. Put the ideas that you have on a Post-it note and stick it on your calendar somewhere in January, February, or March, so that you go back and you revisit that idea again, because there are some busy, busy days ahead for families and programs. And who do you need to partner with? Vicki has this program recorded, and that's why we don't do many chats or breakouts, whatever, because otherwise those would be lost time and people wouldn't hear the ideas. But understand that they are recorded, so that if it would be helpful for your staff or other people to take a look at what we have shared, that they would have the opportunity to do that. January, Vicki and I have already narrowed down a topic we're going to be doing. The January topic is going to be equipping families with tools to enhance and extend learning. This is, again, free webinars that we offer. It will be on January 18th at this same time. And there is a link that you can enter into it. Vicki will be following everybody up with that information so that they can get registered for that again. And then we'll give you a nudge the week before, because this is a busy time. We understand that. Also wanted to share with you that this is not the first webinar Vicki and I have put out here. So check with Vicki if any of these previous presentations would be helpful to your staff. So these are the topics we've done: building family partnerships, communicating effectively, building family partnerships. Yes, learning can be fun and games. Learning continues at home, building partnerships with families. One called Movement, Fun with a Purpose. That might be a good one for the winter months when we're not going to be getting out as much. And parent engagement strategies for launching into the school year was how we kicked off our school year this year. Vicki, are there some ideas that have been shared that we want to make sure that we share back out?
We have a couple here. One, Dana uses lots of door hangers.
Cool.
For her home visits. Parent podcast, something we are looking forward to start. And let's see, one person did mention, actually Griselda and Dana, talking about translations being really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Vicki and I have found that Google Translate is probably a pretty close translation. And yes, we're never going to be perfectly translated, because the people come from different areas and different regions. Even when we do an English translation, if I were to get somebody from England and somebody from Australia and the US to all sit down together, I guarantee you we won't agree on all the words. But if they get the general idea, that is really, really important. And sometimes another parent can be a proofreader for you first and say, does that say what it needs to say in our community for speaking that language? What else, Vicki?
That's what we have entered so far.
We thank everybody for being here today. If you have a question or a concern or a challenge that I did not address, please enter that into the chat, and I promise that I will get back to you with a response and give you some ideas. I can't tell you how effective it is to partner with families and to build these relationships by inviting them into your space. And if they're not comfortable in your space, then turn to your public library, turn to a local park, and figure out a place where they are comfortable. One of our strong programs, which really surprised the staff, was we had people who expressed interest in the bank. We had a community where many of our families did not use a bank. They really weren't trusting of a bank. So a local bank worked with us and did a small program for families, and we did it in the bank lobby, and they gave us a tour and let families and children actually step into the vault area. And it was a successful program for both the parents, who learned a little bit more about how to deal with a bank and what to do with a bank, but it was also a great way to have them come someplace that they were more comfortable than coming into our school building. I think we are on time, Vicki. Thank you all so much for joining us today.